Hey, this is Jen Johans at filmintuition.com and filmintuition on social media and Letterboxd. And this is Watch with Jen. This week, I am so pleased to introduce you to Barbara VanDenburgh. She is a longtime arts and entertainment journalist, a film critic, and a member of the Phoenix Critics Circle. Barbara is also the founder and host of the First Draft Book Club, a popular and long-running book club discussing recently published works of literary fiction at Changing Hands Bookstore in Phoenix. She is the former books editor of USA Today and currently manages programming and communications for the Sidney Poitier New American Film School at Arizona State University. Well, I am thrilled to have another Arizona girl with me, my friend Barbara VanDenburgh, who is incredibly knowledgeable and passionate about movies. I loved being on her podcast that she had a few years ago. We talked about Miller's Crossing. I was the weirdo that loves that movie. And so that was a blast. And Barbara, it's really great to see you. How are you doing?
I'm doing really well. I am so excited to be here to talk to you today about my favorite filmmaker and the person who taught me how to watch movies.
Yes, I know. We were talking off air. I wasn't sure if I was bullying Barbara because she is synonymous with Spielberg. Like even this week, as we're recording this, she was, giving a talk about Close Encounters of the Third Kind at the Phoenix Art Museum, which is amazing. And so we have the perfect person for this podcast. But yes, I did kind of like, hi Barbara, we're talking about Spielberg. But I also thought it's two Arizona girls. This is great.
No, it's it's never an imposition to have to talk about Steven Spielberg. So no, he's I was born in 1982, so I was born the year E.T. came out, and I've been marinating in Steven Spielberg movies my whole, I'm the perfect age to have grown up in the age of VHS, just drowning in Steven Spielberg content my whole life. And, his name was on everything I loved growing up, whether it was his movies or the things that he was producing. He was the producer on An American Tail and Tiny Toon Adventures and Animaniacs, and his name was just on everything I was watching. And then, his name was the first name that I was able to clock and recognize as, oh, this is a person who makes the things I like, in such a way that I was able to recognize when I was watching a Steven Spielberg movie. So really, he's the person who taught me about how to watch movies, but also who taught me about authorship in film, whose hallmarks I was able to recognize, and it was just sort of like a training ground for being able to recognize that in other films. So I'm just incredibly passionate about him and excited to be here to talk today.
No, that's amazing. And I was born in 81, so I think we're going to have a lot of the same cultural touchstones. Like the first video I remember getting it was at Christmas. My aunt bought them for everybody, and it was E.T. and it was green. Did you have
I had the exact same thing. I think I got it for Christmas or something.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, the exact same thing.
Yes, exactly. And then I remember when the Indiana Jones movies were offered at McDonald's for, I don't know if it was a Paramount tie-in, so it was also Ghost and a couple others, maybe Top Gun. But I remember getting Indiana Jones for $5.99. It was a crazy deal because back then videotapes were a fortune. But yeah,
they were. Yeah,
with them. And
Indiana Jones was maybe the first adult man that I was like, I think I have a crush on this person. Which was good taste.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just, I came of age in such a way that when Jurassic Park came out, it was the summer I was 11 years old when Jurassic Park came out. That's the first movie I went to the movie theater over and over and over. I was old enough to be able to go to the movie theater over and over and over again. And I watched it so many times, my parents finally had to be like, no, you can't. There's a problem. You have to stop going to see Jurassic Park.
That is so funny. I read the book and I finished it just before I went to, so at first I was trying to compare it, but it scared me to death. I remember we were in a packed theater and, kids screaming, and I'll never forget what that whole experience was like. Yeah.
Well, for me, it was weird because Jurassic Park, and I don't know how this was possible, except that it was the 90s, but somehow I went into Jurassic Park completely blind, not knowing what it was.
Oh, wow, that's so cool.
And I don't know if it's because I was just 11 or it was summer and
Yeah.
I was outside a lot, but I hadn't seen a commercial. I hadn't seen a trailer. I was failed by the Arizona public school system and I didn't know what the word Jurassic meant. So I didn't know it had
Oh,
anything
wow.
to do with dinosaurs.
Okay.
And my dad, my dad loved film, but he didn't like going to the movies. So we'd watch a lot of films at home.
Okay.
But he didn't like going to the movies. So anytime he wanted to go to the theater, it was kind of an event. And
Yeah.
there was this day in the summer, it was a weekday that he had off of work. And he comes in to my room at like 9 a.m. and he's like, get ready, we're going to go to the first matinee showing of a movie called Jurassic Park. And I'm like, is this weird? Are we really going to the dentist? Are you kidnapping me? And this is all a ruse? But he took me to go see Jurassic Park at like 10 a.m. on a Wednesday or something in the summer. And I went in completely blind, not knowing that it even had anything to do with dinosaurs. And I just remember I remember getting so lost in that movie and having this feeling like, oh my God, dinosaurs are real and they exist on Earth right now and they found them and I'm watching them in this movie. And I was drunk off of that film when I got out of it. And like, I'll never have an experience like that again. You can't go into a movie blind anymore, I guess, unless you're at a film festival, but.
No. Yeah, I try to avoid trailers. Some of my critic friends like make fun of me about that. But then I heard Gene Siskel did and I'm like, well, I'm okay.
I try not to watch them either, honestly.
They give so much spoilers. Yeah.
It's true.
When I had Ben Mankiewicz on, he was talking about his 3 most like formative, life-changing theatrical experiences. And one was Midnight Run because it was for a Midnight Run podcast. And then it was Jurassic Park and Out of Sight. But he just like zeroed in. He was telling us the story of going and what that was like. It was pandemonium and just, and I remember that. So it's really cool, like the we were there people, that, not to be one of the OG get off my lawn people, but we were there.
It was really just, it was an event.
Yes.
Like it was a cultural event. It was something like profound. And to have been there for that cultural event was really meaningful. It was really special. Cause it's not the same watching it on your TV. And I love it. I watch Jurassic Park constantly. It's really not the same having seen it a bunch of times and just watching it on TV at home, like having that experience of discovering dinosaurs with a theater full of people and feeling that.
Yeah, I remember that was also the year it was kind of a crazy back and forth because it was Jurassic Park and Schindler's List. And I mean, my gosh, to think it was the same filmmaker making those, it's kind of one of those experiences where it doesn't happen much in movies. We had like Soderbergh with Aaron Brockovich and Traffic, but oh my God, they're so polar opposites. But when you watch them, I mean, you see Spielberg and I mean, not back then, I didn't know, but I remember both of those experiences at the theater and just what it was like.
Well, and I remember my parents I didn't see Schindler's List in the theater, but my parents rented it whenever it came out.
Yeah.
And I remember, and I was young, I was like 11, and I remember my dad sitting me down very intentionally and being like, we're going to watch a movie that's kind of hard, but it seems like it's important for you to watch. So I'm going to explain, he gave me some context and explain what we were watching. And I remember recognizing, because I was really starting to understand and pay attention to film around that age. And I, of course, knew who Steven Spielberg was because I had seen Jurassic Park 8,000 times in the theater. And I just remember at 11 or 12 or however old thinking, this is the same guy who made both of these movies. Like his name, which is very recognizable, is on both of these films, and they're so different, and they were such powerful experiences in such different ways. And to have made both of them, which are so ambitious, in the same year, it's not even that they were successful and that they were good, it's that they were boundary breaking, and intense productions and ambitious in the same, like I don't even, like it's superhuman.
Yeah, it's like, and there, if it was musically, it's like two totally different concertos, basically, because they're
Hmm.
playing with color and tone and different things. And, one is for the crowd, one is a popcorn picture, and the other one is, to remember this experience and to think, why didn't we do anything? And what happened to all of these people? And also to make you sort of, weigh in mentally and emotionally on the whole thing, and Oscar Schindler being a controversial character and all of that. It was actually an extra credit. I remember that opportunity at St. Stephen's Catholic School, and we had that, and I was one of those kids, like, I grew up watching movies, and I wrote like a Leonard Maltin style video movie guide by the time I was in sixth grade
Of
that
course
maybe
you
like
did.
two
Of course
people
you
read,
did.
you know. So I was a nerd already, but I remember that was so traumatic, and I will never forget seeing it. It's kind of one of those films that you watch and it just imprints on you,
It
where,
does.
you think about, if I watched it today, and I have not seen it since, but I remember it. So, like, the girl in the little red dress, the whole, oh my
Yeah.
God.
Well, I mean, I rewatched it actually like a week ago because I've been doing
Okay.
this Steven Spielberg rewatch, and I got to the Schindler's List part, and I put it off for a while because I was like, it's hard to get in the mood to watch that. But I mean, it's phenomenal, and it's, I think of it. I don't want to be hyperbolic, but I do think of it as being this kind of like holy object in that Steven Spielberg has created
Yes.
this. It's a teaching tool that you can use
Yep.
generation after generation as an entry point to understanding and talking about the Holocaust. And it's almost more than a film.
Yeah.
And the little girl in the red dress I remembered so keenly because I was a kid when I watched it,
Yeah.
and I remember clocking, again, when I say Steven Spielberg taught me how to watch movies, that's one of those things. When I was young, I'm like, why is she in red? Why is everything in black and white when
Yes.
movies aren't in black and white? This is in black and white. That was a choice. Having a little
Yeah.
girl in a red dress, that was a choice. What is he trying to say with this? So it was, as a child, one of those things that I clocked and thought about. And, also as a child, the little girl in the red dress is something that you can connect with. Like, oh, maybe that would have been me in the little red coat, little
Yeah.
red dress. And, yeah, it hits just as hard now as it did then.
I know. Yeah, it was devastating. We were talking off air. We both watched for the first time the Spielberg documentary from 2017. It's available on HBO as we're recording this. It is excellent. And when they were talking about, that's when he started experimenting with handheld and showed the clips, all of a sudden, it made sense on that level, but it also made sense why it felt so urgent, and like
Right.
you were watching it unfold as it was happening. Yeah, and it is interesting how that made such a huge impression on both of us. Earlier this year, I watched again for the first time since then, Malcolm X,
Oh,
because I did an
yeah.
episode on Delroy Lindo, and it was amazing because I had seen it then. My mom was liberal and wanted to make sure that we knew our history and the history of the world. And so we watched all those things. I'm the weird kid who saw like Platoon, and when I was, I don't think she wanted me to see that one, but my dad showed us, when I was like 8. But Malcolm X, I remembered some of the sequences so vividly. Like when I
Yeah.
was watching it, all of a sudden I'm like, oh, when he looked up the words in the dictionary, and I remember turning to my parents and being like, is that really the definition? And she's like, we have a dictionary, go check.
My
And
parents did that too. Every time
yes,
I wanted to know about a word, you know where the dictionary is, go get it out.
yes. I know we couldn't Google it, Barbara.
No, we couldn't, but also we had good parents who knew that it
Yes.
was a good habit to establish. Like, you want to know something? Go figure it out.
Yeah, I know. I remember like all of these movies when I was talking about, when I was watching the documentary, you forget just how versatile. You're like, oh, wow, Color Purple. Oh, wow, Munich. You just don't The Terminal, like all of these things together, really, you do see some of his same obsessions, like
Yeah.
absent fathers or a difficult parent relationship. Like you see all of that stuff. He always kind of had the Peter Pan thing, like long
Yep.
before he did Hook.
Peter
Yeah.
Pan, Pinocchio, there are
Yes.
like fairy tale motifs that even in movies where you don't think that they're there, like Peter
Yeah.
Pan is my favorite children's work of children's literature. I've read it 800,000 times. And I see Peter Pan in Catch Me If You Can. Like there's a
Oh,
scene
yeah.
where he like goes up to the window and his mother is with another child and it's snowing and he's sort of like watching but apart from his own family. And like that's literally from Peter Pan. That's literally a scene
Yeah.
from Peter Pan. So it's his whole filmography is rife with this sort of fairy tale language.
It really is. Yeah, we'll get to AI, but like yesterday when she, with the shoe, all of a sudden it's like, Cinderella. Yes.
Yeah.
So he loved his fairy tales. And, it's kind of like with Scorsese, who's my favorite filmmaker. And I grew up on his movies where I'm like, I'll tell people, yeah, Raging Bull is the perfect one, but it's the one I can't watch as much as like I'm going to watch Goodfellas any chance I get. And so I see that with Spielberg where I'm like, Schindler's List, he will never, like that is such a perfect movie, but he's also made a million other masterpieces that I love. And when you said Catch Me If You Can, I was thinking that might be my favorite actually.
That's a great favorite to have. I think that is as one of the best films, certainly one of the best films that he's made this century. But I think it is like one of his top tier, I think it's one of his top tier films.
Yeah, and it was better than Gangs of New York. Scorsese that came out the same year with Leo. It was like Leo was, yes, it was the better movie, though I should rewatch Gangs. But yeah.
Things that I really like about Gangs. I think Gangs is a bit of it's a tonally uneven and a bit of a messy film, but the things that are really good about Gangs are really good about Gangs. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also I have weird favorites with that. The Terminal with Spielberg is another one. I just love it. I watch it a lot. I watch so many of these, but I was thinking about that. As much as he has kind of jumped around and he loves the grand, he in the style of David Lean and those kind of epics, he really kind of stays away from comedy, but he likes to work comedy in, like when he works with Kasdan and some of those great writers, or even Jurassic Park, which is, rife with funny moments.
I think all of his movies are, even, and this is going to sound obnoxious, but even Schindler's List is very funny. And I don't mean that the content is funny, obviously, but the character interactions and the dialogue and the way that the script moves at a clip, like there are so many laugh out loud exchanges. Obviously when you're not watching something horrific, but when it's, Oscar Schindler, Liam Neeson bantering with Ben Kingsley or what have you, like there are so many funny exchanges. Jaws
oh
is
my
hilarious.
gosh, Jaws is so funny. Yeah.
And Jurassic Park is hilarious.
Yes.
Like they're all, he has a very good sense of tone and comedic timing, and things always move at this like pleasing kind of clip, unless the rare instance that his movie totally fails. Like there are a couple of films in his filmography that I think are total failures, but aside from those, like he's just got this really good sense of comedic rhythm, even when he's not making an outright comedy.
Yeah. And to think, growing up in Phoenix and making his little movies here when he should have been in school and as an Eagle Scout and with his classmates. And I loved kind of revisiting that in the documentary. I am one of the few people, I loved the idea of Fabelmans more than Fabelmans. Mm-hmm. But it was really cool to actually see the archival footage. I worked at Phoenix Theater, which is right next to the art museum where you did your talk.
Yeah.
I know, we're just kind of in the neighborhood, basically. And anyway, when I worked there, I found out that in the 60s, it was called Phoenix Little Theater. This is nothing that you don't know already, but I'm explaining. He showed his first early movies. And when I was there, actually they've renamed the entrance, like the Spielberg entrance, and it's fancy and it's beautiful now. I mean, the box office was in the back. It was kind of sketch back then, and it's amazing. And that, I remember the big fundraiser for like, we are going to remodel this place. And I mean, we had, like Doris Roberts, and we had like some names coming. And I remember though the brass being, and we have Spielberg's lawyer. He was like filming something at the time, but he gave money, and so it was just amazing. And above like all these great people, it was, we have our guy back, our Arizona guy. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like there is this intense rush to claim anybody we can in Arizona, right? Like any musician, filmmaker, actor, anybody who has like a plausible, like that we can claim. Like I see Emma Stone's face all over the Valley Youth Theater. Anytime something with Valley Youth Theater comes up, even though Emma Stone didn't live here, I don't think for that long, or she moved to California pretty early in her ambition to become an actress, but like she went to Valley Youth Theater for a while, so Emma Stone's face is all over everything Valley Youth Theater. But I mean, really, he did, one of the things that the documentary and the Fabelmans had me appreciate is that he really did spend his formative years in Phoenix. Like, we're not just trying to lay claim to something that isn't ours. He spent like his formative years, the years that these obsessions with suburbia and suburban discontent and broken marriages and families falling apart, like all of that happened here.
Yeah. No, and it's interesting you say that about like claiming people, because recently I talked about how much I love Bob Dylan, and I'm from Minneapolis originally, and we totally claim because he grew up there. But I had somebody from New York like, oh, he's East Coast, and it's like, yeah, he went there.
Right.
But, Highway 61 revisited. Highway 61 is like, come on, you guys.
Right.
And so we get into a turf war a little bit, but I think we can definitely claim Steve because, Steve, we're buddies.
Yeah, we're on a like casual first name basis.
Yes. Which actually was a funny story. He just came as a surprise to Ingleside Middle School, which was his middle school back when it was a junior high. I worked in the library. I wasn't there. It was like right before I started. He had just shown up visiting people and came by, and he like signed stuff for all of the kids. And the librarian, my old boss, said, she's like, I don't know what came over me. I went over to see if he needed something. And I said, oh, Steve, you got it. Like, and she's like, Steve, who the hell am I?
But he seems like the kind of person who would prefer for you to call him Steve. So I don't know.
It was
assumptions, but
yeah. Yes. Yeah. I remember a lot of those movies. I'm trying to think. Okay. Jaws definitely made a mark early. I think I remember seeing that as a kid. Weirdly, I saw the second Jaws first.
I saw the second Short Circuit before I saw the first one.
There you go.
That's how life is when you're a kid, right?
Yeah, Caddyshack 2 came out like when we were kids, saw that first. Yes. Yeah, that happens sometimes. And I love Jaws. That's a movie I remember not appreciating as much until adulthood, until I'd done film school. And then you realize all the lessons he learned from television and also from Hitchcock of like, and it was out of necessity too, which I think is when the most creative things happen. But how much of it is like we don't see the shark, not only the John Williams score, which is iconic, but also just the reactions. And especially when you have such great reactors as like Roy Scheider popping back up. And Richard Dreyfuss has one of my favorite all-time laughs. And, when you have these guys in there reacting, it's amazing. And the barrels, it just as scary. Yeah.
I just read, I also didn't connect with Jaws until I was a bit older.
Okay, good.
I think it's a masterpiece, but
oh yeah.
I watch it every 4th of July. Like the way you watch Home Alone or It's a Wonderful Life at Christmas. I watch Jaws every 4th of July. It's my 4th of July movie. And I've just been reading, there's a book that came out recently called The Last Kings of Hollywood. Have you read that book?
Not yet. It's on my list. Yeah.
It's good. And it's nonfiction, and it's about Steven Spielberg, primarily it's about Steven Spielberg, Francis Ford Coppola, and George Lucas. Scorsese's also very much in it. De Palma is very much in it. And it is about this, sort of cohort that redefined Hollywood in the 1970s and how all of them became filmmakers and sort of changed the landscape. And I mean, I've read about the production issues on Jaws so many times, but the book does a really good job of laying out just how chaotic and just how chaotic the set was, how many problems they ran into. They get all these people and a director he was like 27 years old when that movie came out, which is unfathomable to me as like a 44-year-old who can barely has their life together. Imagining making Jaws under these conditions is incomprehensible. But he's like 27 years old. It's only his second feature film. The only other film he did before this for theatrical distribution was Sugarland Express. So this is really only his second feature film. And they're shooting on location. He fought to shoot on location. So they're at like Martha's Vineyard, like on location, and nothing is going right. Even like the things that you don't think, like most minute things, like they can't get the light and the colors to match because the sun and the sea like change so much and are so mercurial. And so even just matching shots is a nightmare. Never mind the fact that the shark didn't frickin' work and that nobody tested it in salt water before they shipped it out to Martha's.
I know. And he was worried nobody would buy it. It was too rubbery and all of that. Yeah. But it's amazing when you think how young he was. But then, in the documentary, it reveals, I mean, there's legendary stories about how he went on to the Universal lot and everybody, he started an office and I don't know.
Right.
But he directed Joan Crawford at 20 and it was a script for Night Gallery by Rod Serling.
Yeah. His very first job is directing Joan Crawford.
Which is scary. I just did an episode on Joan and she scares the hell out of me.
I would be terrified. I would be terrified if like Joan Crawford came back from the dead and they're like, you could die. I'm like, nah, I'm too scared. I'm too scared of her.
I know.
And like, I'm sure she could read you for filth in a second if you didn't know what you were doing. So for that to be the first thing you ever direct in a professional capacity is nuts. And like he had done. Yeah, and he had done Duel for TV, right? So like Duel was
God, I love Duel.
I love Duel too. And Duel is kind of like in a lot of ways a proto Jaws in that it's a guy who's faced against this force that is animalistic and that there's no reasoning with, right? It's a man against a truck, but you never see the truck driver. And it's like the truck has become anthropomorphic and is chasing you and trying to kill you. And so it's very Jaws-like. And I think you can see what would become Jaws in Duel.
Yeah. That movie, I remember seeing it first when I was babysitting and it was a nightmare and it was an extra nightmare because something like that happened to my mom once.
Oh my God.
She was driving home from a night job when she was only like 20, 21 and a trucker was bored or something and just kept and she was on the highway forever. And to this day, she's terrified of semi trucks. And so when I watched that, I was like, it was visceral response of, I don't know what I would do. And everything you think of, this guy does. And I do love that. Yeah. The reactions and you can see that stuff paying off, for him, in Jaws, like every experience builds. He's even admitted that, like I wasn't the same because I hadn't gone through life and done all these things. So like, he wasn't ready to do Schindler's List until he was ready and, Munich until that. And I think, but it's amazing to think I would have been intimidated, as hell Duel is one thing. And I love his episode. Is it Murder by the Book? I think the first Columbo, which is just the shots, like that opening shot
Yeah.
above with the parking lot is just the best thing ever. And he looks down on some of that stuff, which is, everybody does, like writers, when you reread your work and you're like,
Yeah.
yeah. So I think that's an artist thing. But, all of these little things helped build. And one thing I love is even his failures, the tonally awkward stuff like, 1941 and some of
Yeah.
the other ones, taught him things and showed him his strengths. And yeah, I think,
Well, and even in the worst Steven Spielberg movies, and there's a number of them that I don't like,
yeah,
but even in the worst, there's stuff that I can appreciate in it, right? Like
yeah,
1941 you just mentioned, I think is kind of a total tonal disaster. It's all
yes,
over the place. It can't find a rhythm. The score is really good. There are some really fun comedic set pieces
yeah,
and some well orchestrated pieces. So like I can always find something to
yep,
take away, something to find pleasure in a Spielberg movie, even when it's not working for me.
yeah, for sure. So Jaws is one you watch every 4th of July.
And like what's crazy about it, we talked about how the production was completely messed up and the shark wasn't working and he's, 27, the cast and the crew are like, we don't know about this guy, what's going
Yeah,
on. He kept thinking he was going to get replaced. He thought the studio was going to replace him like constantly. He didn't want to take a break and go on vacation or leave the set at any point because he was afraid that he would come back and somebody else would have taken over. So,
like
it's
Coppola on Godfather
like
thought he was
Coppola
gonna
on
get fired
Godfather.
every
Yep.
day. Yeah,
It was the same thing with Steven Spielberg.
yeah,
And it's for all of the production disasters that occurred on that film, like he was forced to think on his feet and come up with solutions. Okay, the shark's not working. Well, we're going to do something creative with the camera so that, we're seeing from the shark's POV. So it doesn't matter that we don't have the shark. Shark's not working. Okay, we're going to use barrels moving through the water to indicate where the shark is. And we're going to create tension that way. And it's just there's such formal mastery in that movie, just the way
yes,
that scenes are blocked and set up, the way that it moves at a clip, it never gets boring. I mean, there's just such formal mastery on display. Like there are shots that are iconic. There are things from that movie that are iconic that you'll never forget, like the dolly zoom up on Paul Schrader's or on Roy. I can't remember anybody's name. Roy Schneider's face.
yes,
Like there are just things from that movie that are part of the pop cultural lexicon forever. And a lot of it was on a wing and a prayer and just trying to come up with a solution in the moment. And that he has that inside of him, that he has those like instincts to be able to do that stuff it's just nuts.
yeah.
It's just, I don't like to throw the word genius around, but that's like a kind of genius to
It
be able to
is.
do that.
Yeah, we're going to need a bigger boat when you talk about Spielberg because so many of these movies, like you could spend hours talking about any of them. And you mentioned, Lucas and those guys. And one thing that I did find interesting, and I remembered and started digging through some of my old texts is, yeah, they were the USC boys, Coppola and Lucas. And so when Duel was a thing and it was getting a lot of acclaim, like they kind of were like, oh, and then Lucas watched it and was like, you have to see this, grab
He talks
Coppola.
about it in that book, how
Yeah,
they were at a party, they were at a house party, and Lucas is like, I'm going to dip upstairs and find a TV for I'm going to watch 15 minutes of
yeah,
Steven's movie just so I can say I've
yeah.
seen it. So he goes upstairs and he starts watching it and he ends up watching the entire film. He ditches the party, watches all 90 minutes of this film and comes downstairs and is like, you guys, this is great.
Yeah, I'm one of the weirdos. Like, my favorite George Lucas movie is still American
I
Graffiti.
think American Graffiti
I'm
is,
obsessed.
I think it's the only great film he's directed.
Yeah, okay, good. I'm not like sacrilege.
No, I
But,
think it's the only great film he's directed. I mean, I love the original Star Wars, but I
oh
think the
yeah,
one that he directed is probably the least well directed of the three.
yeah, I know. And I think it's great too. You could see how, all of these guys inspired one another and cause, Coppola, he was one of the writers, I believe, along with the husband and wife couple on American Graffiti, and of course the producers, and then Marsha Lucas editing some of
Yep.
these. And it's just really cool to see that. And when I was watching the documentary, I was kind of thinking like, You and I, yeah, we were lucky to be born when we were born, when these artists were making these kind of films, when you could go to a studio and say, I want to make Jurassic Park and I want to make Schindler's List in the same
Hmm.
year. That doesn't happen anymore.
No.
Movies with, maturity and plots. And I think we're butting against it, and independent filmmakers are rising, and we see that all the time now with, these original movies this year. There is
Yeah.
a little bit of a revolution happening. But we grew up with these where
Yeah.
the idea of art and commerce, there were a lot of, people blaming Spielberg and Lucas and stuff, but it was still possible for art to be commercially successful,
Well,
which
and I
is
think,
cool.
yeah, that's one of the things that Steven Spielberg's superpower is being able to to bridge that gap, to
Yes.
do art and to do commerce really well at the exact same time. And he does get a lot of cultural criticism for that. Like,
Yeah.
Jaws changed so much, right?
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
the way that movies were traditionally, it changed how movies were traditionally released, right? Like, they used to do slow rollouts of films. So like The Godfather, which had made a ton of money just a couple of years before, they did a
Yeah.
slow rollout. So it would open in a couple of theaters and it would build word of mouth, and they would open it in a few more
Mhm.
theaters and it would build word of mouth. And so there was no cultural omnipresence for something even like The Godfather, because it was being slowly rolled out across the country and it was a slow burn. Jaws, they did a totally different release strategy, and it was kind of a radical idea. They're like, no, we're just going to release it in a bunch of theaters and we're going to do it all at once, and we're going to make it an event where people don't want to miss it on opening weekend because people are going to be talking about it. So they turned it into this event. And, it kind of created the framework for the summer blockbuster, or for the tentpole film that was going to be released big and everybody needs to go see it opening weekend to talk about it. And what I love, there are lots of different modes that I love film in, but
Mhm.
something that I do admire about film as a medium is that it's a very accessible medium. A
Yes.
lot of art isn't quite so accessible.
Mhm.
It takes a lot of time and effort to read a book. And they're not necessarily, especially with libraries underfinanced and
Yeah.
under attack. Books are expensive and it can be kind of hard to get a hold of one, or you might be on a wait list for a year before you can get a book. And, something like opera or live theater is financially prohibitive, or it's not even playing in your city if you're not living in New York or LA. What I love about film is that everybody's got a movie theater. There's a movie theater everywhere. And now you don't even need a movie theater. It's on your TV on a streaming service that you probably have, right? It's relatively inexpensive compared to these other, it's practically free to go to a movie versus go to a concert, for example.
Oh, yeah.
And you get to have this communal experience of a story with a bunch of people gathered together in communion, and it's just so accessible. And so, the commerce aspect of it, I don't mind it. I don't think it's ruinous to film. I love that we have this affordable, accessible medium that we can all enjoy in communion with one another. And so what I just admire about Steven Spielberg and think is his absolute superpower is that he is able to create these things that everybody goes and sees and makes a ton of money, but he never loses the artistry in all of that.
Yes. Oh, that's perfectly said. See, this is why I have you on, Barbara. You're an authority. Yes, you should teach a class on this subject for sure. And yeah, exactly what you were saying. I think it is hard because we do want to kind of the punk era or the alternative era. Like once Green Day got successful, they sold out.
Right.
That kind of thing. And so you can see that how people did turn on Spielberg. And so I do love that I think he just got more interesting too. As much as
Yeah.
I love, the big popular films, and they're like rides. They're akin to rides. You can get into Indiana Jones and you go on that adventure right with him, and you're laughing and you're scared, and I hate snakes. And so it's a whole thing. But then, Empire of the Sun comes out, or
I
Color Purple.
love Empire of the Sun.
I'm so glad you mentioned that because I remember vaguely seeing it, probably like 90, 91 on video. And that was the last time. And I remember it being really powerful, but now I'm like, I need to see that again.
I do think it's one of his better undersung films. I really, really love it. And it's got an insane performance from a super young Christian Bale. I think he's
Yes.
like 12 years old in that movie and just like carrying it on his shoulders. Like he's in scenes with John Malkovich and like serious actors, and he's just carrying that whole movie on his shoulders. It's nuts.
Yeah. And one thing that's also great about these filmmakers that we are mentioning throughout this is I think a lot of the younger generation now thinks that this sort of cinephile mentality started with Quentin Tarantino. And it really didn't, because when you think about, these were people who were marked by movies at a young age. As somebody who's had like a million health issues since I was a kid, I stayed and watched movies and wrote. And so I always identified, with Scorsese. I always jokingly called him like the patron saint of sick kids everywhere, because he had asthma and he, stayed indoors and went to the theater and watched movies. And Coppola was sick too as a kid a lot, and he did the same thing. And Spielberg, he was a Jewish kid in Phoenix, Arizona. He felt like an outsider. He got beat up, and he felt better and more comfortable making his movies. And he would go every week. I think he said like every Saturday. And, the David Leans and those were his favorites, but he watched everything. And these people learned their craft from a young age. Like I've seen, that's why this news about Scorsese saying he's going to use AI for storyboarding is so heartbreaking, because the first thing he did, I think it was like age 8 or 9, was draw these ornate storyboards in his house.
Yeah.
And it's like, so they grew up on film because they were, I think, the first generation you could say that could do that. We had televisions then. They could, and so they got into the craft because they loved the craft. And I think that's hopefully why everybody gets into art nowadays. But it's good for people to realize some of this is self-knowledge. Some of it, you can teach yourself these things if you expose yourself to enough art. Go get those books at the underfunded libraries. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, that's all Steven Spielberg did was watch movies. I mean, he was he was living and breathing movies constantly, because it was his, like you said, they were like the only Jewish family in their neighborhood in Phoenix. There were no Jewish kids at school. People would like yell at them on the sidewalk and say like, Jews go home. And it was not a fun time or place to be like the only Jewish family in the neighborhood in Phoenix, Arizona. And so like this was his like safe space, and this was, what he hyper fixated on, and he just absorbed all of it. And I mean, my film education was, I was an only child, and we didn't have a ton of money, and so there was a dollar theater. I grew up in Maryvale, which, if you're familiar with Phoenix, is not one of the best parts of Phoenix.
Okay.
But I grew up in Maryvale, and we lived right down the street from a dollar theater. It cost $1 to get inside, and so whenever my mother needed cheap entertainment, like we just lived at that dollar theater. It was just nonstop going to that dollar theater, because we would sneak in. My mom would pop a bag of popcorn, like Orville Redenbacher popcorn at home, and she would put it in her purse, and we would eat it, and she would bring Cokes, and we would wait till something happened in the movie, and we'd open the Cokes together. And I saw everything, because it was $1 to keep me entertained in air conditioning. So like that was my film education, was just, I'm an only child and we don't have a lot of money and there's a dollar theater down the street. That's what we're doing now.
Yeah. And I think that's, a great example for people, because it is really exciting as we're recording this. Backrooms just came out. He was 20 years old. The filmmaker started on YouTube. I think we're going to get a lot of filmmakers off of YouTube and TikTok and things that are too young for me, and I don't understand all of them. It's funny. I was dating this guy who's a decade younger than me, and he was talking about, backrooms and YouTube and all these things, and I'm just like, and it was funny. I remember the first time we saw a trailer at the theater, it was for Black Phone 2, and it's Ethan Hawke, and he's like, it's Maya Hawke's dad. And I was like,
oh no, the generational
I
divide.
felt so old at that point.
I will say, I haven't seen Backrooms yet, and I want to see Backrooms. I am
Yeah.
also very like, get off my lawn about the
Oh,
YouTube-ness and
yeah.
the
Yeah.
TikTok-ness of it all, but I did see an interview, like, he's 20 years old. So
Yeah.
the age Steven Spielberg was when he was haunting the Universal lot and was able to get his film in front of Sid Sheinberg and and I will say to his credit, I've seen an interview with him where he was talking about AI and he was like, no, I'll never use AI.
Yeah.
Like the entire point of
Yeah.
filmmaking and artistic expression is like the thought and the effort that you put into it. And I'm not interested in this. And I think it's antithetical to like the mission of art and telling a story. And so I'm more inclined now to give Backrooms a
I
chance.
agree with you. Yeah. And I think the young are going to save us a little bit with that technology hesitation, because it was super cool seeing all of the commencement speeches come out and all
Yep.
the booing for AI. And it's like, they just spent a fortune and got in debt. No, they're not rooting for the people that are going to
No.
steal their jobs.
And I'm seeing a return to like practical effects
Yeah.
and set building and more of this sort of like DIY stuff. And again, I think back to Steven Spielberg making movies in the desert in Phoenix and in the early 1960s. Like there's archival footage from that documentary and they recreate this in The Fabelmans, but they're doing a World War II scene and all these kids dressed up running across the dirt and he's got 2x4s hidden in the dirt with some dirt on one end so that when they step on the 2x4 the dirt goes flying and it makes it look like they've been shot at. And it's like I'm seeing more of that energy from young
Yes.
filmmakers of like let's do it for real, let's figure it out, let's make some movie magic instead of just we'll do everything in post.
I agree. I think it's so exciting. And it reminds me too of, again, this era in the early 70s with like Roger Corman and, people like, James Cameron,
Mm-hmm.
blanked for a minute, and Scorsese and other people that worked for Corman. You would also have just like an actor like Bill Paxton painting sets and like
Yeah.
putting styrofoam on things. They were learning their craft and like they were in it for the love of it. And I think that's what we're seeing. We're seeing more hands-on creativity. I was talking to my niece recently and she was saying like, she's only 20 and she's like, I got into embroidery and golf and anything offline. And I'm like, that's
Yep.
good. Yeah.
Yep. And kids are getting dumb phones now, flip
Yeah.
phones, so that they aren't on the phone all the time. And like, yeah, I'm hopeful. I'm extremely hopeful.
I was going to ask you, do you remember, okay, the earliest Spielberg that scared you to death, which I have to say the thing that scared me in E.T. was, for whatever reason, the keys, in the woods when they were like
Okay.
looking for,
Yeah.
yeah. How about you? What do you remember being scared of in Spielberg?
Oh, Temple of Doom. Temple of Doom, which I was watching
Ooh,
constantly and, extremely dark. The guy getting his heart ripped out through his chest. The room full of bugs, the monkey brain. I mean,
yes,
everything. Yeah, it's a Temple of Doom. I mean,
terrifying.
famously, credited as being one of the movies that inspired the creation of PG-13 as a rating. But, I was way too little when I was watching Temple of Doom. And, yeah, had nightmares about the guy getting his heart ripped out of his chest.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you your favorites. Like if you had to choose a best, a favorite, what are the ones you watch the most? I'm curious.
So oh God, it's like asking me to pick my favorite child.
I know. You're like, she
It,
asks the most annoying things.
no. I mean, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, I think is an insanely special movie. It's in a
Mm,
way the movie he wanted to make his whole childhood because it's,
so
he made,
personal.
yeah, it is personal. He made Firelight, which was, he made the film that he made that he showed at the Phoenix Theater when he was a teenager before he moved to California with his family, was this film Firelight about, people having an encounter with aliens. And so it was something that he wanted to make as a feature film. And he tried to get that to be his first feature film.
Yeah.
He pitched this feature length version inspired by Firelight. And the studio was like, this sounds expensive and weird and you need to prove yourself first. And so he made a smaller, more personal film. He made Sugarland Express. And then immediately after that made Jaws. And Jaws was such a huge success. That was his blank check to be able to make Close Encounters of the Third Kind, which was inspired by Firelight. Mm-hmm. And so I think that is a really special piece of filmmaking. If I'm being totally honest, I think my favorite Steven Spielberg movie is a really weird, controversial favorite Steven Spielberg movie, which is AI.
I was going to say, yeah.
And so let me tell you about when I saw AI.
Yeah.
I was 19 years old. It came out the summer of 2001. Mm-hmm. And this was at the time when I was really getting into film, like in a serious, intentional kind of way. And I was incredibly excited to have a new Steven Spielberg movie because I had realized by this point, like, this guy is meaningful to me in a serious way. So I was so excited for the new Steven Spielberg movie. And I got into a Thursday night preview screening. So this was like before that was a regular thing, before movies came out on Thursday night. So I was able to get tickets to this Thursday preview screening. And I had a profound experience watching that movie in the theater. I had a really profound experience. It made me cry. I was emotionally moved, and I was intellectually moved by it. I was like, this is it's a weird movie. It's a very weird movie.
Yeah.
And I know it's not everybody's cup of tea, but it did something for me that at the time was really profound. And so, again, this was 2001. This was in the infancy of the internet. There was no like Rotten Tomatoes that I could go on and see everybody's reviews. There was no social media where everybody was doing their like, influencer, on the spot reviews. So like there was no way for me to get other people's reactions on a Thursday night before the movie came out. Mm-hmm. So I was like, my like blood was electrified. I was so into this movie that night. I stayed up all night long waiting for the newspaper to hit our driveway, because the newspaper would come at like 6:30 in the morning and there would be a movie section and there would be a review of the film. So like the only way I knew how to get a reaction from this film and to be in conversation with somebody about it was to wait for that movie review to hit my driveway. So I stayed up all night long. Newspaper hits the driveway at like 6:30 in the morning. I run out, I go get the paper, and I open it up to the movie section. And the Arizona Republic's film critic at the time gave it, I believe, 2 stars out of 5. Hated it. Didn't even like write he didn't even hate it enough to write a good hate review of it. It was just like, what is this? What is this shit? Like a very dismissive kind of like, what are we even doing review? Yeah. And I just remember like the floor falling out from beneath me reading this review. And I was like, no, that's not the movie I saw. We saw 2 different movies. And I was like, I was having a crisis. I'm like, did I like misunderstand the experience I had last night? Or what it, like, he's an authority because he reviews movies. So like, shouldn't he know this movie is great? And so when my mom woke up, I was like, you have to go to the movies with me this morning. We're going to go see a movie. So I stayed up all night long. My mom and I went to the first matinee screening at AMC Arrowhead in Peoria of AI that morning at like 10 a.m. And I watched it again and I had the same experience. And I was like, no, he's wrong about this movie. And I remember that just being the first time I paid attention to like critical analysis of a film and had my own opinion and wanted a way to get that out, which in a lot of ways that was the movie that like pushed me towards film criticism. And it was really weird because, you know, it would be like 6 years later, I started at the Arizona Republic and my desk was across the way from that same film critic. And I was like, I know exactly what it is.
Yeah, that's interesting. He wrote one that I took a lot of umbrage for, or with, because it was about Elizabethtown. And he took apart Cameron Crowe. And it was like, I adore Cameron Crowe. I feel like I'm sort of a cross between the Ione Skye character and Say Anything that went to college too early. And then, and was like the outsider. And then the Patrick Fugit character in Almost Famous. And so even though Elizabethtown wasn't a masterpiece, his whole thing was like, you know, do we like any of his movies? Because he was so bad. And it was like the worst. It was like making you rethink, should we even be watching this guy's movies? Like, what is he doing? And I almost, you sit down and you're like, am I going to write a letter to this guy? Like, of course not. But yeah, so I know what you're talking about. I started paying attention really young. I loved Roger Ebert,
Mm-hmm.
and, Siskel and Ebert, of course. And then I was like getting to high school early on purpose because they got the New York Times so I could read Janet Maslin, who I'm, privileged to know a little bit now, and like, A.O. Scott and all of those critics. So you could
Yeah.
actually read top tier criticism, and also, the Chicago papers, they got all of them at my high school. It was a really good place. But yeah, it is interesting. I think, it makes you realize film is very personal. It's very subjective. We're all going to watch a different movie. And also it depends on like what you're going through at the time. One of my film professors told a story about taking his dad to see Man on the Train, the LeConte film, and
Mm-hmm.
not knowing what it was about. And it was right before his dad had brain surgery. And it was
Oh
like,
no.
and I did the same thing. I took my mom to see Eternal Sun's, Spotlight, or what, on this Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. It's a weird title. And we checked the mail on the way there, and the divorce went through.
Oh no.
And I was like, I picked the worst damn movie. I mean, it's a great film, but
Yeah.
it was like, oh my God.
No,
Yeah.
and like so many movies are colored by what was going
Yes.
on in life at the time. So it's incredibly personal, and
Yeah.
there's no critic who's going to have like for
No.
you 100% like
No, not at all. Hmm.
rate. And in fact, like you mentioned Roger Ebert, who was also
Oh,
somebody,
he was wrong on a lot of
he
things.
was wrong on so many things, but
Yeah.
he was interesting and thoughtful even when he
Yeah.
was really wrong. So
Hmm.
like it was something that you could be in conversation with. Now what I can't stand though is like a dismissive, I'm not even going to give this the time of
Yeah.
day. I'm just doing this because it's my job kind of review, which is
Yeah.
what I felt the AI review was. And
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean it's a really weird movie. It's a strange movie. It's got a strange tone to it. If you changed the music out, it plays like a horror movie. Um,
Really does. Like
it real
yeah, rewatched it yesterday, and I was just, especially on his face, Haley Joel Osment's face, it is so devastating. And, I don't know, you talked about the Christian Bale performance in Empire of the Sun, but my God.
Well, and this movie, like it was initially supposed to be a Stanley Kubrick directed
Yes.
movie. So Kubrick for at least a decade, over a decade, had been developing
Mhm.
the concept for AI as a film. And he had been in conversation with Spielberg about it over the
Yeah.
years. And they went back and forth with Kubrick being like, no, I think you should direct it. And Spielberg being, no, I think you should direct it. And
Yes, the stories of the fax machine. He made Spielberg have a fax machine in his bedroom, and Kate made him move it because it was like, there is a time difference in England anyway, but
yep,
it's like 8 hours. But it would go off at 3 a.m. with more from Stanley. Yeah.
yep. And Kubrick was convinced that no actual human child could play this role, right? So
Yeah.
he worked for years trying to develop the technology to create an expressive robot boy who could be David. And of course it was horrible and it failed, and they could never
Yeah.
get one that could do it, that didn't look terrible on screen. And Spielberg abandoned that. So Kubrick dies, Spielberg takes over. Spielberg tries with the robot angle to get a robot developed to play the boy, and then drops it as soon as he sees The Sixth Sense. He sees Haley Joel Osment in The Sixth
Yep.
Sense, and he's like, "No, that's the kid. That's David. He can do it." And
Yeah.
it's to me one of the most insane child performances I have ever seen. Like whatever you think of that movie, and I know it's not everybody's cup of tea,
Oh, it's incredible.
I don't think you can criticize anything about that child's performance. It's nuts.
No, not at all. And I think his interactions with Francis Conroy in particular are just incredible. Yeah. And Spielberg would know too, because he, Henry Thomas and Drew Barrymore,
Mm-hmm.
Christian Bale, of course, seeing like the world through these young children's eyes is what he does. He also worked with Elle Fanning on
Yep.
War of the Worlds, and all of these kids. And so, yeah, he would know right away, like, this is the kid.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, you see David experience existential terror. The scene
Yes.
where he gets to Cybertronics, the place that's exiled in, a Manhattan that's underwater and frozen. And, he gets there and sees this sort of like warehouse that's full of replicas of him. And
Yeah.
you've got copies of him hanging from like hooks overhead, and there are versions of him inside boxes getting ready to ship out. And there's this version of him, this like boy's face with the electronic backing inside of it that he walks up to, and it illuminates his face as he's looking out through his own eyes. And like, this is somebody who's experiencing existential collapse.
Yeah.
And this kid is like 11 years old, 10 years old, 11 years old, however old he is able to like emote that. How? Like, adults can't do that. How is he able to do that?
Yeah, I've talked to a lot of actors and they point that out. Like they all it seems like actors our age or in their 50s, like that era, if they talk about a child performance, they will always bring up Bad News Bears. Like, we don't treat kids like that anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, when Walter Matthau was going nuts in the dugout and you see these kids' faces, like, that's them. And today it's, you have people mugging or like, get mad or whatever. And like, okay, on the count of 3, raise your arm or something. And, so, that is not how Spielberg shoots. You can really see the work that they are doing offset, like to make sure everyone understands this and to speak to them on their level. Drew Barrymore has talked extensively about what that was like, and Henry Thomas, and my God, yeah, it is a really just epic performance. And I will say, looking back, it's a little tonally, like when we go to the Jude Law stuff, it's like a whole other movie, but it is a damn good movie. And I think a lot of it too, and maybe that was in the review. And I think I remember actually reading that review because I had just moved here and saw it at the theater here. And I think some of that was colored by the fact that Kubrick had died.
Yeah.
So it was like, how dare the guy that makes E.T. make a Kubrick movie or something.
Well, and I think some of the misconception about AI too, and it's gone through a profound critical reappraisal, I would say.
Like Eyes Wide Shut. Yep.
Yeah, it really has. So like at the time it was very, kind of a failed summer blockbuster, right? Like it didn't totally fail. I think it made its money back and a little bit more maybe, but it was a failure critically.
Yes.
And I remember just feeling very out of step with everybody at the time. That's the first time I remember having a passionate feeling about a movie that other people didn't share. And it just, me questioning myself, but then also really trusting my taste. And it's gone through a critical reappraisal. Like, they just screened it. Like, I know whenever there's been a film event in LA, like I got a lot of friends in LA and New York, a lot of film buddies.
Yes.
And, I follow them all on Letterboxd. And so when I see a string of just a random movie on Letterboxd, I'm like,
screening.
You did a screening. And so there was one in LA this last week. AI was all over my Letterboxd all of a sudden. I was like, dang it. And they all went and saw AI somewhere. Haley Joel Osment was there for the screening and did a talk back afterwards. But they were all 5-star reviews. And I'm like, see, they get it. People like get it now. It's connecting. And the other thing that I think people didn't understand about the film at the time that has gone through a reappraisal is that I've heard lots of criticisms about AI over the ending. Like, the last 20 minutes, the coda of the film. It's so Steven
it is
Spielberg.
a little long. Yeah.
But it's so sentimental, it's so schmaltzy. I think it's incredibly dark and sad and depressing.
It really is. It's like you're almost saying goodbye before death. And it's devastating, I found.
Yeah. So I don't know. I'm glad even with movies, and I don't think it's a perfect film. I do think there's like some tonal inconsistency and it's not, it's a weird film to say that is my favorite because I know it's not a perfect film.
No,
but I think it's a really ambitious film, and it's a really interesting film, and it's a really complex film that I have to gnaw on a bit. And I'm just, yeah, it just is exciting to me that people are discovering this movie and that their attitudes towards it are changing and that it really isn't the critical failure that it was presented as being at the time.
Yeah, my hope is we start getting more rep screenings here. Whenever there are any that I see that are good, I go. We'll have to go if we see something cool. But I miss that about LA. Yeah, I used to go a lot more. And I remember my first trip out there. It was like just after the, pandemic when we finally had the vaccine. And I actually bought movie tickets before I bought airfare. Like, that was my thing. Yeah.
Well, one of the greatest joys right now. So my job currently, I work for the Sidney Poitier New American Film School at
Yes.
ASU, and we have
So cool.
we have an amazing movie theater. So we have this facility out in Mesa called the Mix Center, and they have a like 260 some odd seat movie theater, and it's like Dolby Atmos certified surround sound, and the screen is really good. I mean, it's a beautiful theater, like technically. And so we've been showing lots of films, and they've been screenings that have been open to the public, but it's also very much about getting to show these film students, these young filmmakers, these movies that are seminal on the big screen. We just did a David Lynch series, and
That's right. I remember you did a Kurosawa one too.
we did a Kurosawa series, which was really great. And it was, we showed them, for example, Hidden Fortress.
Yeah.
And seeing all the young filmmakers have it clicked, oh, there's a lot of Star Wars in this.
Yeah.
And to see that connection happen, we showed them Eraserhead and Mulholland Drive.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah.
And it was to be able to like be free of distractions, to sit them down to watch Mulholland Drive and Eraserhead, just like free of distractions, locked into the film. And when it was over, they were like, I don't know what I just watched, but I think I love it, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is, but I think I love it. And that's like the most exciting thing, I think.
The ultimate reaction.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm so glad you did that. Yeah. When I first I lived in Mesa when I first moved here because we were by my grandparents. So that way, if they had like a Tupperware emergency, I could run over and help them. Then we moved to Phoenix, and the Scottsdale Public Library here, I went and talked to them, and I'm like, can I program and do film screenings? And so I did. And my goal was kind of to introduce people to like certain character actors and certain directors like Mira Nair, and it was a lot of fun. It was kind of like the event for the gray-haired seniors in the because it was on a Sunday, and so it was really cool to see all of these people come in. And I had a fun experience with 310 to Yuma, which I showed them for like Ben Foster, and where this woman watched Russell Crowe intently watch a woman in the bar, that scene, and she stopped breathing for a sec. She was and started coughing all the way out of the theater, and I went to go check on her. She's like, that man. And, she's like intercept. It was just a lot of fun to be able to.
What's great at these sort of like repertory screenings is to see the full spectrum from like very, very young to old. We did a screening, it was like a year ago, of Lawrence of Arabia. We watched Lawrence of Arabia, and
on the big screen.
Big screen, which is always, if you find an opportunity to see Lawrence of Arabia on the big screen, you have to do it. It just transforms it. And, we had 17-year-olds in the room, and we had 70-year-olds in the room, and to be able to talk about this movie together as a group with 17-year-olds and 70-year-olds, and each of, on both ends of the spectrum, getting the same thing out of it is, I think, really special. And I just love these kinds of, we just did Close Encounters of the Third Kind at the Phoenix Art Museum. They asked how many people here saw this in the theater when it came out, and a bunch of people raised their hands. And there was also a guy behind me who was bringing his 2 young children to see it for the first time. And they were little boys. They were like under 10 years old, and they were gasping and going, oh my gosh, and like being vocally reactive.
So cool.
And it's just like, this is amazing that this movie came out even before I was born, and you've got these young kids here who are reacting to it and responding to it. Like it's a piece of living art. Like it's still so relevant, and people are still having the same reactions to it that people had in 1977.
Yeah, and it's a good communal experience. You go through something together with
Hmm.
people, you feel a catharsis. I remember being stunned and then starting to think about why Bleak Week was so popular. You
Hmm.
know, it's so popular with the American Cinematheque. They show these devastating movies for
Yeah.
kids, and it started there. And now it's in like, 10 other cities, and it does incredibly well. And it especially started doing well like during the pandemic or as the world got darker. And I think it's the same reason why we're getting a horror movie resurgence right now, which is like go through terror that you can help somebody solve it
Yeah.
or go through it, and then you feel a little bit better.
Well,
Yeah.
and it's like you're experiencing
Yes,
too
vicariously.
yeah, and you're experiencing emotional catharsis with all these people.
Yeah.
Like it's healing to experience that in community with other people versus just feeling terrified about real stuff alone in your home. Like
I
doom
agree.
scrolling and freaking out
Yes.
about the news versus freaking out about fictional horror that you can all,
Yeah.
have like sort of like an exorcism of feeling together watching it. So no, I
Yeah.
totally get it.
Other Spielbergs that you want to be sure to like tell people, maybe give these another look, other favorite. I know we both think that Munich is incredibly undersung as a film, underappreciated. It's just,
I think
I,
Munich is phenomenal. I think
yeah, I do
people
too.
should, if they haven't watched that in a while, I think it's as relevant as it's ever been. Empire of the Sun, which we talked about, I
Yeah,
think is one of his that isn't gotten the love that it probably deserves. I think Catch Me If You Can is an
yeah,
absolute
love it.
masterpiece and like possibly the best film he made in the 21st century. I don't
Yeah.
know, like other than AI. And um, what are your favorite Steven Spielberg movies?
I would say Catch Me If You Can is probably my
Yeah.
favorite. I really love Munich. I think that is unbelievably great. Um, yeah, I think Schindler's List is probably the best. But when we're talking favorites, I do watch Jaws a lot now as an adult, whereas I think when I was younger, I probably watched Jurassic Park way too much.
Yeah.
But I still love it, of course. But yeah, there are so many good ones. And it's unbelievable too. I did a James Spader screen drafts, and with my friend Kate Hagen, and it was cool to be able to like rewatch Lincoln and think,
Oh,
oh wow, yeah,
Lincoln is really good. And you also mentioned that you like The Terminal, which is a movie I
I
haven't
do.
seen. It's a movie I haven't seen since it came out. So now I want to go back and revisit The Terminal. It's
I
coming
love
up on my
it.
rewatch, but like I'm excited to like watch that with fresh eyes
Okay.
and
Yeah, I did an episode where Tomris Lafley and I,
yeah.
because we both loved it, and for different experiences. For me, it was like when I first moved to Phoenix. I remember, like we left Mesa, came to Phoenix, and it was the 4th of July weekend. And when I came home that night, I found out one of my friends, my film professor, they had had a baby, and so I remember the fireworks going off and just the experience. And it's still, I think, the movie like my mom watches the most. I love it. She was coming over here and worrying about like losing her green card and like what that was like. So it really hit her on a personal level. And yeah, I think that one is really underrated.
All right, I'm excited to watch that again.
Okay, great. Yeah, this was so much fun. Barbara, I promise I won't like bully you into like, we have to do this again. But we definitely do need to do this again, but I'm going to let you choose the topic. Is there
Okay.
anything cool coming up at ASU that you want to plug? Any of these movies for summer or anything people should be aware of? And your book club, of course, which I love. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I would, we don't have anything going on over the summer because we don't have any students, but,
Okay.
in the fall, I'm sure we're going to be doing lots of great things. One of our professors is the, programmatic director for the Japanese Film Festival of Arizona.
Mhm.
And she's also going to be showing some more Japanese, films apart from the festival at the ASU Mix Center. So films.asu.edu, film.asu.edu/events if you want to see what we're up to. But we tend to have tons of free
Cool.
screenings throughout the semester that people can come to and just enjoy some film with other film obsessed people. And we usually talk about it with professors afterwards. it's,
That's wonderful.
a great way to get a deeper appreciation of film. So I'm sure we'll have lots of great stuff coming up in the fall.
So
Yeah, and I
cool.
also host a book club at Changing Hands Bookstore in Phoenix. It's usually the last Wednesday of every month. It's called the First Draft Book Club. And we always talk about a recently released work of usually literary fiction. So yeah, and that's also free to attend because I'm all about free
Yes.
community events that center the arts.
Yeah. No, that's wonderful. Well, thank you so much for doing this.
It's my absolute pleasure. You do not have to twist my arm to come talk about movies with you.
Good deal.
I also want to thank everyone for listening, especially my patrons who support the show and help fund my research, equipment, film rentals, RSS fees, and more for as little as $1 per month at the Film Intuition Patreon, which is the home base for the show. Other ways you can support the podcast are by sharing, reviewing, and subscribing to Watch with Jen wherever you get your podcasts, and also checking out the cool merch store hosted and created by our talented logo designer, Kate Gabrielle. You can find the merchandise store, including shirts, tote bags, stickers, and more by visiting filmintuition.com and clicking on the shop link. The show's theme music is solo acoustic guitar by Jason Shaw and is available in the free music archive. Well, until next time, please take care and happy movie watching. This is Jen Johans at filmintuition.com and Film Intuition on social media and Letterboxd. And this is Watch with Jen.